You know that feeling. You get the call, the email, the promotion is yours. It's exciting.
Definitely. Your inbox blows up. Maybe people offer congratulations. There's that initial buzz.
Right. But then, maybe later, when things quiet down, you look at the actual offer, the role, and this little seed of doubt starts to grow.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to Lisa. She got this director of operations role she wanted, but the thrill, it kind of faded fast, replaced by second thoughts.
What kind of second thoughts?
Well, things like facing, 70-hour weeks, navigating these really tricky office politics, and just constantly wondering, was this the right move?
It's a situation we hear about surprisingly often, actually, and it points to something really crucial for women navigating their careers.
Which is what this deep dive is all about, right?
Exactly. We're digging into how to approach those big leadership opportunities, specifically the really vital questions women should ask before saying yes. It's about shifting from just, surviving in a role to actually thriving.
Absolutely. Because if you're listening, chances are you're ambitious, you're driven, you want to make smart career moves.
You want to step into leadership feeling confident, prepared, not blindsided or set up to fail.
Yeah. Nobody wants that feeling of being overwhelmed from day one.
And look, our chat today, it isn't just based on gut feelings. It's really fueled by stories from the HerSpace community.
A lot of shared experiences there.
So many talented women talking about taking leadership roles without the full picture and then hitting, unexpected roadblocks.
And there's research backing this up too, isn't there?
There is. A Harvard Business Review study pointed out that women sometimes face backlash. They might seem less likable or even hireable if they negotiate as assertively as men do.
Wow. So that adds another layer of complexity.
It does. It can make asking those essential pre-acceptance questions feel, even trickier.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty clear then.
Yeah, we want to equip you with practical, actionable questions, the kind that help you really investigate an opportunity thoroughly.
So you can make a decision that feels truly confident and informed.
Let's start by looking at the bigger picture, maybe with Catherine's story. She's part of the HerSpace community.
Okay.
She got promoted to senior marketing director, looked great on paper,
Right.
but it turned problematic fast.
Right. Catherine called it falling into the leadership trap.
Yeah.
She got caught up in the excitement, didn't really probe into what success would actually take.
And what happened?
Suddenly, the expectation was this huge, 30% jump in lead generation.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And with a team that was short-staffed and a budget that had just been cut pretty significantly.
Oof. And sadly, Catherine's story, it's not really an outlier.
No.
No. Look at McKinsey's Women in the Workplace study. It's this huge analysis, thousands of women, right?
Mm-hmm.
It consistently shows women leaders are more likely than men to inherit teams in crisis or needing a major turnaround.
And often with fewer resources to actually do it.
Often with fewer resources, yeah, and sometimes less clear authority to make the big changes needed.
So why does this keep happening? What's behind that pattern?
Well, one big factor seems to be something called a scarcity mindset.
Scarcity mindset.
Yeah, think about it. Women are still pretty underrepresented at the very top. Only about, 27% of C-suite roles?
Still that low.
Right. So there can be this underlying pressure, maybe even unconscious, to just grab any leadership opportunity that comes along.
Like you feel you might not get another chance.
Exactly. Almost a fear that another one won't materialize. And research suggests this isn't just a feeling. Fewer visible role models up top can genuinely create this perception of limited chances.
Which stops you from really kicking the tires on the offer.
It can prevent that thorough due diligence, yes. You feel like you can't afford to be too picky.
That actually makes a lot of sense. You feel you have to seize it.
Precisely. And it's interesting how this plays out. We heard from an HR leader, anonymously.
Oh?
Yeah, at a big company. She noticed men often ask really specific questions before accepting a role. Things about, how the team works together, who controls the budget, what are the actual paths for advancement. Very practical stuff.
Okay. And women?
Women, she observed, often focus more on showing they could do the job, handle everything thrown at them.
Proving capability rather than scrutinizing the setup.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Less focus on whether the role itself is really positioned for success from the get-go.
Okay, so that's the challenge. We see the trap. Let's talk solutions. Maya's story comes to mind here.
Yes, Maya. She had a very different approach when offered a VP of product development role.
She was more proactive. right?
Right.
After seeing these potential pitfalls.
Totally. Maya's approach really shows this sort of empowered alternative, strategic questioning.
What did she do specifically?
Well, she deliberately set up separate conversations, talked to potential peers, people who might report to her, even colleagues in other departments she'd need to work with.
Smart. Getting different perspectives.
Crucial. And these weren't just casual coffees. She asked pointed questions like, budget authority? How much did she actually control? What were the real decision-making processes? How would they actually measure success in her first year?
Important details.
Very. And significantly, she asked about the company's track record for promoting women beyond the VP level.
Oh, that's a good one. What did she find out?
Well, this digging, it uncovered some things. A bit of a worrying pattern of leadership turnover in that department, actually.
Okay, so red flag. Did she walk away?
No, interestingly, instead of just saying no, she used that information. She negotiated.
Negotiated for what?
For more resources, clearer lines of responsibility, and regular check-in meetings directly with the CEO.
And how did that turn out?
Fantastically, actually. 3 years later, she was promoted to Chief Product Officer.
Wow, that's a great outcome.
It really is. And Maya stressed something important. She said her questions weren't just for her own benefit.
What do you mean?
They kind of set the tone.
Yep.
They signaled how she'd operate, valuing transparency, expecting resources to match goals, believing in collaboration.
Right, it shows you're not just taking orders, you're thinking strategically about how to succeed.
Exactly. It proves asking these kinds of questions isn't weakness, it's not uncertainty.
No, it's the opposite. It shows critical thinking. It establishes you as a thoughtful leader before you even start.
Precisely. So how do we all bridge that gap between, accepting a role maybe too quickly and making that really empowered, informed choice?
That's where the questions come in.
Yes, we've boiled it down to 8 essential questions. They can be that bridge. Let's dive into the first one.
Okay, question 1.
What specifically led to this position becoming available?
Seems pretty straightforward, right? But I guess the answer tells you a lot.
It really can. You need to listen closely to how they answer. Was the last person promoted internally? That's usually good.
Yeah, positive sign.
Or did they leave the company? Why? That might be a bit of a warning sign.
We heard about that from a HerSpace member, didn't we?
We did. She asked this question and uncovered this pattern of people not staying in the role very long. Short tenures.
Which made her dig deeper into why.
Exactly. Prompted more investigation into the department's dynamics.
And it's not just the words, is it? It's the vibe you get.
Absolutely. Notice any hesitation, reluctance to give details. That tells you something, too.
Like that executive coach said.
Right. If they're cagey about why the job's open, what else might they hold back once you're actually in the role? Good point.
Okay, moving to question 2. How is success measured for this position, both quantitatively and qualitatively? This feels super important for avoiding shifting goalposts.
Oh, it's absolutely critical. Vague metrics are dangerous. The definition of success can just keep changing if it's not pinned down.
So you need specifics.
You really need to push for specific key performance indicators, KPIs, measurable things, clear goals before you accept.
Jennifer, the CFO, had a good story about this.
She did. When she asks, the initial answer was really vague, just improve department performance.
It could mean anything.
Exactly. So Jennifer didn't let it go. She asked for another meeting just to define concrete metrics.
Like what?
Things like target budget variance percentages, specific improvements in financial reporting timelines, tangible stuff.
And that helped her later?
Massively. She said those documented metrics protected her when a board member tried to suddenly introduce totally new, kind of unfair expectations mid-year.
The power of having it in writing.
Absolutely. Get it documented in the offer letter, a separate memo, whatever. It gives you that clear benchmark.
Crucial. Okay, question 3. This is a big one. What is the compensation range for leaders at this level, and how is this specific offer determined?
Yeah, tackling the money question. Still necessary.
It's still a fact that the gender pay gap exists, and it can even widen at leadership levels, right?
Unfortunately, yes. So asking this isn't just about your own salary. It's about understanding if you're being valued fairly within their whole structure.
And asking the question itself sends a message.
It does. It signals you know your worth, you understand compensation practices, and you're comfortable having that discussion. Remember Alexis, the tech director?
Vaguely. Tell me more.
She asked how they determined her offer amount, and she said there was this, uncomfortable silence on the call.
Ooh, that silence speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. So Alexis followed up. She had done her homework, provided industry benchmark data for similar roles. They came back with a new offer, $30,000 higher.
Wow, just from asking and providing data.
Yep. Plus some additional equity. It shows why you need to ask. And remember, comp isn't just salary. Think about the whole package: equity, bonus potential, benefits, perks.
Good reminder. Okay, question 4 feels linked to that glass cliff idea we talked about.
Yeah.
What resources will be available to achieve the expected outcomes?
Precisely. This gets right to the heart of whether you're being set up for success or, well, potentially failure.
Especially if women are more likely to get those tough, under-resourced roles.
Exactly. Like Dr. Tina Williams, the researcher, pointed out, women leaders are significantly more likely to land in these high expectation, low resource situations. The glass cliff.
So asking about resources is basically checking if the cliff has guardrails.
Huh. Sort of, yeah. You need to know what you're working with.
So what specifics should you ask about here? Team size, budget.
Definitely team size. Budget authority is key. Like, how much can you actually spend without needing 5 levels of approval? What tech resources are available? And critically, what's the real decision-making power that comes with the title?
Right. We heard about that marketing leader.
Yeah, responsible for a multi-million-dollar budget on paper.
But needed sign-off for anything over $5,000.
Exactly. Imagine the bottlenecks. Completely inefficient.
Okay, question 5. This one shifts gears a bit. How does the organization support work-life integration for leaders?
Yeah, moving past the kind of fuzzy idea of balance to actual concrete support.
So not just asking, is there work-life balance?
Yeah.
Because everyone says yes.
Right. You need to dig into the policies, the practices. Ask for real examples of how they've supported other leaders through, say, significant personal commitments or life events.
Like Sarah, the senior VP, her experience was telling.
Remind me.
She asked about accommodations for leaders during big life stuff. They gave a great example of a male exec working remotely for weeks after his wife's surgery.
Okay, sounds good.
But then she asked specifically about female execs, maybe with young kids or other caregiving roles, and the answer got really vague in general.
Ah, that contrast is revealing, isn't it? It tells you where the real flexibility might lie or not lie.
So you look for evidence, like email expectations after hours, meeting schedules.
Exactly. Are meetings consistently scheduled at 7 p.m.? Do leaders themselves seem to model frantic, always-on behavior, or do they demonstrate boundaries? Look at the reality, not just the policy.
Got it. Question 6. What formal and informal mentorship opportunities exist for leaders at this level? Growth and support.
Super important. Mentorship, and maybe even more crucially, sponsorship, are vital for getting ahead.
And the research shows a gap there for women.
It does, unfortunately. Studies indicate women often get less of both compared to men. Men seem more likely to have those senior sponsors advocating for them.
So again, need to ask specific questions.
Absolutely. Are there formal programs? How do they work? Who are the typical mentors? Are senior women actually available and involved?
What if the internal options aren't great?
Good point. Ask if the company supports or facilitates connections with external mentors, too. That general counsel story was revealing here.
The one where they said plenty of mentors.
Yeah, but when she asked for specific names of senior women who could mentor her, they could only name one person, an external board member living in another country.
Not exactly accessible day-to-day support.
Not really. Shows the difference between a program existing on paper and genuine practical support being available.
Okay, 7th question. This feels like it cuts right to the chase about commitment. What is the representation of women at levels above this position, and what is the promotion track record?
Yeah, this one gets past the talk and looks at the walk. Does the company actually promote women to the highest levels, or is there a ceiling?
And it's okay to ask for data on this.
Absolutely. Don't hesitate. Ask for representation numbers for women in leadership, maybe promotion rates over the last, say, 3 to 5 years.
Alina, the operations director, remembered the hiring manager being surprised when she asked this.
And what was the answer?
After some hesitation, he admitted no woman had ever been promoted above director level in that whole division.
Wow. Okay, that's crucial information. Doesn't automatically mean don't take the job, maybe.
But it definitely sparks a conversation.
Exactly. It opens the door to talk about why and what's being done to change that. A company that's genuinely committed should be transparent about this stuff and talk about their initiatives.
Makes sense. Okay, final question, number 8. How would you describe the leadership culture, particularly regarding collaboration versus competition?
Culture. That often intangible but hugely impactful element.
How does it specifically impact women leaders?
Well, navigating environments that are highly competitive versus highly collaborative can present unique challenges for women sometimes. This question helps you gauge whether you're walking into a supportive team atmosphere or something more politically charged, cutthroat even.
Rebecca, the CTO, she has this one multiple times, right?
She did, asked different people and got conflicting answers. Some said highly collaborative, others mentioned healthy competition.
Healthy competition can be code for something else.
Well, yeah. When she dug, for example, she realized healthy competition basically meant department heads were constantly fighting over resources and recognition, sometimes undermining each other.
Yikes, that's so healthy.
Not really. But knowing that allowed her to negotiate for clearer boundaries around her authority and set expectations for collaboration before she took the job.
So talking to potential peers is key here.
Definitely. Ask to speak with people who would be your colleagues. Get their candid take on the culture, the good and the bad. It's invaluable insight.
Okay, so we have these 8 really powerful questions, but just knowing them isn't enough, is it? It's about how you use them.
Totally. And the key thing is asking these questions doesn't just protect you. It actually positions you.
How so?
It shows you're a strategic thinker. You understand what makes a business and a role within it successful. People worry about seeming demanding.
Right, like you're being difficult.
But actually, asking thoughtful, well-prepared questions boosts your professional image. It shows you're serious and thorough.
Maria, the CEO, she said something about this.
Yeah, she reflected that the questions she asked way back in her initial interviews for an executive role really set the stage for her reputation later.
Because she asked about outcomes and resources.
Exactly. People immediately saw her as someone focused on accountability, on execution, on how to actually get results, not just the title.
And the timing matters too,
Yeah.
right? You don't ask all 8 in the first 5 minutes.
Good point, no. Some fit earlier, like why the role is open, how success is measured. Compensation usually comes later, often after an initial offer.
And things like mentorship or advancement track record.
Those can signal your interest in a long-term future with the company, so maybe mid to later stage interviews.
And how you ask is important too, the framing.
Crucial. Frame them around mutual success, strategy, understanding the business, not just your personal worries.
Can you give an example? Like the work-life balance one.
Right. Instead of, I'm worried I'll have no life, which sounds purely personal.
Reframe it.
Reframe it. Something like, I'm interested in understanding how leadership here effectively manages both strategic priorities and personal commitments within the current organizational structure. See the difference.
Yeah, it sounds much more strategic, like you're thinking about effectiveness overall, not just your own schedule.
Exactly. It shows your strategic mindset, your grasp of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And, making that move into leadership, finding the confidence to ask these things. Often that comes from community.
Which brings us back to her space.
Yeah. Rebecca, the member we mentioned earlier, she said connecting with other women who'd been through similar interview processes, women who had asked these kinds of questions, that gave her the courage.
She realized it wasn't unusual or demanding.
She realized men ask about promotion tracks and resources all the time. There's no reason women shouldn't feel just as empowered to get the clarity they need.
It's true. So choosing a leadership role, it's way more than just the job title or the salary.
It really is. It's about checking if the conditions are actually there for you to succeed, to contribute your best, to thrive.
And by asking these 8 questions, you're not just passively taking what's offered.
No, you're actively shaping your own leadership path right from the start. You're being proactive.
And thinking bigger picture. When you do this thoughtfully, it doesn't just help you.
Right. It helps pave the way for others, too. Every time a woman successfully advocates for the clarity and support she needs,
It makes it a little easier for the next woman.
it helps normalize these essential conversations. It builds that expectation. It reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote.
Which one?
Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women.
That's powerful and relevant here.
Absolutely. So if you're looking at that next leadership step, we really hope you'll go into it armed with these questions.
Be an active participant. Shape your journey. Set yourself up well.
Definitely.
And maybe a final thought for everyone listening to mull over. What kind of leadership culture can you help create just by asking the right questions before you even walk in the door?